Hi, folks. It's Jason Pramas, DigBoston Executive Editor, and welcome to the now, let's see, third installment of this new series, Better Boston Arts, in which I'm discussing the question of how folks in the Boston area art scene, and we're going to talk about this idea of scene today. I know with my guest, which I'll talk about in a moment. But we're talking about how this arts thing in the Boston area that we have, the various scenes, the various communities, the various networks that do arts broadly writ, how we can kind of rebuild what we had before and ideally make it better after the pandemic, is brought to heel. So without further ado, today's guest is Audrina Warren, and I'm going to bring her on here. Hi, Audrina. And she's a member of the Atlantic Works community, and she's an artist based in East Boston. And welcome to the show. So thanks for coming on today. Are you there? Can you hear?
Yes, hi, I'm here.
Hey, okay, good. I was worried. So welcome, Audrina, to the
I can't.
show. Um,
Okay.
is there a delay? Are you having some trouble, like hearing me in like real time?
No, I can hear you. I thought I was going to see you also, but it's okay.
No, no, no. I'm sorry. Pardon me. No, I can see both of us. You can just see me. For those
Gotcha.
folks who are interested in the tech aspect of this, I'm using Ecamm Live for these segments, and it allows me to do a two-shot, with two of us on screen here, so we can have nice interviews. But we're actually using Skype. The system only allows me to use Skype, which is kind of an old and busted system that's now owned by Microsoft, which Microsoft doesn't really take care of as far as I can tell, but it
Yeah.
works as far as it goes. So here we are. Anyway, uh,
All right.
welcome to the show. So usually I start off by having folks tell our viewing audience about themselves. Who are you, Audrina Warren, and what do you do?
Um, well, yeah, like I said, I'm a visual artist. I've been East Boston based for the last 11 years. And for a lot of the time, I was also with Proof Gallery, which was in the distillery building in Southie. And that's uh, that's where I am right now.
Cool.
I've been a lot of meeting with my neighbors over the years, so it's fun and I like living here.
Right, right. And I mean, what kind of art do you do? What media do you work with? What's your scene?
Um, I've made several kinds of art. Like I've made two-dimensional art, three-dimensional art. I am doing a lot of research on debt and economics right now.
Nice.
Um,
Kind of too bad that
yeah,
David Graeber died just now. He was like the master of
I
debt.
was yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm in the middle of that book right now. So
Wow.
it's brilliant. So it's all the same conversation to me. So
Yeah.
we're as an artist and as a human.
Right. Well, I mean, so um, why don't I ask then? I mean, well, let's just get right into it. I mean, um, the broad question I asked kind of posited there being or having been a Boston art scene. Now, when I do this, it's shorthand, right, for a whole bunch of different stuff,
Yeah.
right? But you had an immediate reaction to even the expression scene, right? Which was what?
Um, that I don't dig it and that I'm trying to back away from it is what I actually wrote to you.
Yep.
Um, yeah, it seems like a trap. If I can be that blunt.
Oh, please be blunt. I mean, you said that there are, obviously there's scenes, there's a number of like different networks and stuff going on, and you
Right.
said that they compete against each other. So maybe you want to
Yes.
elaborate on that a little bit.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's something that I've had a particular experience with, as I think I mentioned with the open studios and things like, and that could, or can of worms, as they say, but it's, you can encounter these different avenues of the scenes and realize that they're all sort of crashing into each other, and and that somehow just keeps happening. It's really so I'm gonna try to keep this in order, but
Hey. Do what you feel.
I'm really like I'm very serious about it. That we are not really holding each other up with like good networks,
Right.
And so we're spending a lot of time trying to one up each other, basically, and yeah, it's really I don't like I don't know why, like
Well, right. I mean, I don't think it's innate to humans that they have to. I mean, I know that like right-wing libertarian types and stuff, like ultra-capitalists, are like, yes, it's the war of all against all, and we must always fight each other, and we always do. I don't buy that, but I mean, do you mean, by the way, are we talking when you say this? Is it just visual arts you're talking about, or is it all the various arts? Performing arts and so on and
it's
so
definitely
forth?
it's all the various arts. It's
Yeah.
like, are we,
Yeah.
like what's the most, and I think that's a Boston thing too, but it's like, what's the most Boston festival? What's the most Boston art? What's the, we can all only go to First Friday, or whatever. Like that's, and if we all go to this one thing, then we're supporting the right section of the scene or something like that. And it's it's doesn't need to happen. Like I don't know, like I don't know how many times I've made it to other parts of the metro area and been asked, how did I get there? Just,
how did you get, like, let's say, to Waltham or something, or like even across Boston? Yeah. People are mystified by this. Wow.
Yes,
man.
People are mystified by that.
I was a gallery artist and stuff like that for a bit, after my MFA a few years ago and stuff, and I never expected to do visual arts at all. It's just because I became a photographer at midlife, a photojournalist, and then I wanted a terminal degree, an advanced degree, and that's what ended up working out for me. And I tried that thing, and I just didn't get it. I don't want to disparage it. I'm just saying, like, I wasn't. I mean, I understood what was going on, like the political economic implications. Like, you have these white box galleries, and a lot of visual artists, if we're talking about visual artists, which I am at this point, like want to get into this place because it's a place where they can sell their work as a commodity, usually to wealthy people, to like stick on their living room walls or whatever, and it's a way of buying a certain kind of cultural status, right? And if you've made a certain amount of money, the only way you can kind of one up anybody else is to have this, are you still there? I'm sorry, I want to make sure you're still there. Ooh, you're frozen.
Yeah, it did.
It cut out, yeah. All right, well, I think the folks who are ultimately...
It cut out a little bit.
I hope this doesn't keep happening. I was a little bit worried that this might be the wrong time of day and week to try to do this, because I have noted that there's times when there's worse traffic. I think it's doing it again. Wow. Does it work? Hello.
I can hear you.
Oh, you can, because you're freezing on me, so, and cutting out. So, all right. Let me just roll back to where we were. I was just saying, there are, within the visual arts scene and within the music scene, which I've also been in a little bit, and other scenes that I haven't been in, but I have observed, certainly there's people doing things at cross purposes, and there's people competing with each other in what can be unhealthy ways. So if we take that as like what has gone before in your estimation, and I have some agreement with you, what do you think we can change? I mean, the pandemic has been this kind of moment that has made a a lot of the stuff that was bad about, the arts worse, like, because a lot of arts are public facing, and now people can't easily have publics, right? People can't do the gallery thing so easily. They can't do, the stage thing so easily, and so on and so forth. So like, and a lot of venues were already going under before all this, right? A lot of spaces. You wrote about this. I should say to folks that I'm asking artists to write, a couple, 3 paragraphs on these issues. So when Audrina's referred to us discussing this, that's what she means. She's written some stuff. So when you were writing, you were referencing that, like, spaces are going away. We're getting banks instead of, like community art spaces and stuff like that. That was already happening. Now it's really accelerated. We've lost much more. Places are going under. So where do you think we should go? What might make things better, less unhealthily competitive at least, and easier for folks that are trying to get involved in the arts to do so, and have a broader scene and so on and so forth. What do you think?
Yeah, I was definitely thinking that there needs to be more support for the less formal. Um, so there's a lot of barriers that are put in front of people who are, more or less just trying to live their lives. And part of, what artists are doing, living their lives, is being creative workers. And so there always seems to be this. I'm going to try to talk towards the future, but there always seems to be this sort of like hoop after hoop that people to jump through to to be recognized as valuable in a specific way. I think that so something that always comes to mind is the artist certification process, and how that is meant to I don't know, quantify how artistic somebody is, or how somebody fits into some kind of specific artistic box.
Yeah.
And so I was looking around recently, and related to all of these, thoughts that I was having, and I was thinking about some kind of like database, but and there are several databases, and I think that's not the only thing, and also not everybody wants to like look through a database, and so on the one hand, it's like, okay, so we already have this database.
What are the databases? I mean, let me back up a bit. When you talk about artist certification, What are you referring to? Is this the public art stuff for the city of Boston, for example, or what?
Well, I mean, it's always like, so for some reason we always have this argument about like and so the people who are making decisions in government and
You've been cutting out like a lot.
People who are building structures are always meant to statistics on what communities then. Oh.
I'm losing your signal like tons. Like I haven't been able to hear most of what you're saying. Yeah, it's a bad connection.
Okay.
Try again. I mean, it might work now. I'm not so sure. Just try saying what you just said again, and we'll see if it'll work this time.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, it is telling me there's a connection. So yeah, I guess so I was thinking about databases and how people can connect differently
Yeah.
to in some ways to not have to explain their own worth, because there always seems to be these sort of like worth explaining sort of barriers that people have to work around. So if something, for example, if an arts venue is needed or proposed or something as maybe a something that's connected to a new building of condos or something like that.
Right.
Then there always has to be some kind of like assessment of like, okay, well, what's the like arts health of this neighborhood, and so how can we? And so then they have to go around like asking people, oh, are you an artist? Like, or are you a registered artist?
And what does that mean? What does it mean to be a registered artist?
Exactly.
Like, I don't
so
know.
I was like,
okay.
Yeah. I unfortunately, become a big contrarian about this. But there's there are databases of artists, just like there are binders of women.
Oh, great.
And like all that information is out there. And there's kind of no reason for anybody as I'm just a person who makes art and also needs to like buy groceries. So
yeah.
Do I have all kinds of time to like go around like making sure I'm on everybody's list? No.
No, you don't.
And why should I or anybody else?
And to be on the list, do you have to, like, I think you have an art degree, I have an art degree, right? So like, do you have to have degrees to even be on these lists?
Well, that's the thing. It's like there's different kinds of lists. So
right.
that's that you go with the like different levels of like competition. It's like, oh, are you on that list? Oh, are you on this list? Are
wow.
you like on right? So it's like, and I think we talked about it's.
I am so glad I don't have to deal with this right now. Like, so, yeah.
I mean, but that translates into everything though. It's like,
right.
Are you Red Sox fan? Are you Bruins fan? Like dumpster Starbucks. Like this whole
humans love to separate themselves into groups, and there's in groups and out groups. Yeah.
It's the worst.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It sucks.
Yeah. So. Yeah, I've just kept like, I've been thinking about this for years. Like, why do we, and we're doing it to each other too, a little bit. It's like, I heard something really interesting recently that, can I say other people's names? Like, I was listening to Malcolm Gladwell talk about.
I mean, we're just on a YouTube thing here, and it's like you can do whatever you'd normally do in that kind of forum. So. Yeah.
Okay. So I was listening to Malcolm Gladwell talk about higher education, and he said that the best way to level the playing field is don't ask, don't tell, which I thought was brilliant. Like, great. I'm glad you have an MFA. Like, I actually don't have an art degree. And
you do not. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. But it's
I'm not sorry you don't have an art degree. I'm just sorry that I said, like, oh, you have an art degree.
It's okay. But it's that people use those things against each other.
Yeah, they do.
and they've been doing it for years.
I mean, I wanted to be a professor. That's why I got it, not in art. I ended up using it in communications and journalism. I just needed some top degree, and that opportunity presented itself. But I mean, definitely though, people do go for them so that they can wave them around and be like, "Ooh, I'm an MFA. Now you can be a PhD in art," which is a whole problematic discussion we could say for another day. But it's big in Europe. And the contagion may be spreading here. Like, oh no, it's not enough to have an MFA now. Now you've got to have a PhD. It's like, oh, come on, Anyway, sorry, I digress.
Yeah. No. It's all like, but that's what I think that's where my main blockage in my mind about that is. But it's. And I guess that's what I mean by we're all in competition with each other. We're all instead of like finding ways to like prevent the erosion, we're looking for more ways to, I don't know, like
make more of
throw more of it. Yeah.
I mean, look, you're the kind of artist that I tell my young reporters, not my personal young reporters, the young reporters who I recruit and, cultivate, to look for the people that may not even think of themselves as artists. They're just doing whatever their thing is, and nobody's valorizing it. And I want us as journalists to valorize it, but not to do it in such a way that scene, especially if it's seen in a working class community of color, immigrant community, like that, it then gets colonized by the people that we're kind of talking around or about a little bit here, with the right degrees, mostly white, mostly like upper middle class and up, this kind of thing, those are the folks that always get talked about in the press. And I would like to talk about a much broader group of people. And I would certainly like to see a scene, or scenes that are more broad-spirited, more open, rather than what you're describing, which is, closed and competitive.
It's just very Boston. It's just the way, we're surrounded by higher education, and so everybody's brains are like, going in that direction. Like we all have to, get one on top of the other. So
well, like every cab driver here has like a master's degree. It's amazing, like it's I'm not even kidding. Like it's literally true, But it's like a BA is like just a high school degree here, for anything.
Yeah, a friend of mine's father is a mathematician, but his degree, you know what I mean? It's like it didn't count when he came to the United States.
Yeah,
so
that's right. I know people that were doctors in their home countries and they're not allowed to be doctors here. So they have to be something else, like a nurse practitioner or something like that, or a physician assistant. They unless they kind of repeat some of their school over again, And this is people that are fluent in English, no problem, But there's a lot of that stuff. There's a lot of guild-like behavior, I think it's been called, in labor economics, And guilds were sort of like proto-labor unions, but they were also exclusionary, like frats and sororities and stuff. Like they were trying to restrict the number of nice jobs in a particular sector. So when you see guild-like behavior in the arts, it's the same kind of thing. These are people that are trying to grab whatever there is in terms of public money or private money or spaces or whatever unto themselves in their small group and keep out everybody else, right? And I don't know. I mean, what role do you think art plays in like a nice society? Like, do you have thoughts on that? Like, why do we in a good society? Like, why do we even have art? Why do we do this stuff?
For every reason. Like, I really think that, like, for every, like I said, my phrasing was that you can take anything out of a box and turn it into art. It's like, I think that's true. Yeah. Like, you can, you don't have to stop at like a mural and, or like a thing in a plaza. It's like those things are fine, but you don't have to stop there. It's like, you can literally do anything. Like
I can't do any of those things. Like, I have no ability to draw, sculpt, all the traditional visual arts, I cannot do. If it wasn't for machines that we call cameras, I wouldn't have gotten to a place and then into school where I would then, start doing like stuff like that was research-based, archival, like installation, stuff like that, where I could take things and put them together in different ways and tell certain stories, right? Without necessarily, or I'm even artists are allowed to get other people to do it. Like if you're really good at painting, I could say, hey, Audrina, can I, get some of your work in this work, and if you're a collaborative kind of person, you'd be like, yeah, let's do it together or whatever,
And and then the more you do things like that, the easier it is to encounter them, to like understand them. And that's the thing about anything. It's like we all, humans are, on the warpath of each other right now because that's our current habit. Like we're so like into this, like we're all fighting, we all can't think of a solution, but you can, it's like it's in there somewhere. Like I'm not trying to say this to be some like bonkers idealist, but it's in there.
And so what if you were? You're an artist. We're artists. Whatever.
Well, that's what I mean. It's like like I would hope that somebody on the internet is like going to find this and be like, oh, like maybe, like I'm a big why notter. Like, I think those, like,
Yeah.
I don't think too many things are not really possible.
Well, and for journalists, I mean, I certainly train, journalists that understand. I feel one of the most important questions you can ask is why.
Mm,
As a journalist, you can just keep doing it. Why? Well, why? Well, why? Like, and you get deeper. You get people sometimes thinking at cross purposes to themselves, but then that results in something else interesting. In art, also, I mean, as in life, I think it's good to be a why notter. And I mean, I do think that's one job of the arts. If I had to think of any reason why we have this human activity that some of us call art, right? And other people just call human activity, innate human creativity that people do have, and maybe don't cultivate or don't have time to cultivate. Especially these days when everybody's so busy just trying to survive, and yet it's still an incredibly rich society and world, even as we're driving it, downhill as a planet, at least as far as human life is concerned, it's still very rich, and yet a lot of us, both of us included, it sounds like, have had to struggle just to, to do anything beyond work a gig, make money, maybe work a second or third gig, have some flat we crash in, and then, go to sleep, and then it's another day, and we do the same thing all over again.
yeah.
When I talk to older people, I'm 53, people older than me, because I came on these sort of Boston scene when I was like 17 or 18 in 84, 85, and I was born here, but I mostly grew up in Peabody, and then came back when I was 17 to go to BU, and then got expelled from BU for politics a couple of years later, and was homeless for a while, and a pit kid in Harvard Square. I don't usually talk about all this stuff, but, like
I was almost too. I gotta.
yeah, it happens to the best of us, right? So it's like,
it's a place to be. Like, yeah.
and I mean, what was I saying? I just really had to fight to find the time and a bit of money to do what I wanted to do, be it a magazine or be it an artwork later, or be whatever. And even doing Dig now, where I'm at a certain place, gotten to a certain point. From the outside, it may seem like a bigger achievement than it, or a bigger enterprise than it really is so far. But getting to that point has taken decades, and fits and starts and career changes, and and working shit jobs, and while trying to do what I want. And so, okay, we could say that struggle like that helps us like do more interesting stuff, but it kind of sucks too. When you meet people from like Sweden or Denmark or Finland or places like that, where they have more a government and a culture of like helping each other out, and not being so tight-fisted with all the riches that are out there. You find out that people can be super creative and have not had to struggle so much, and they get to have nice spaces to work in that cities and towns and counties fund, or the central government funds. I think this is I'm trying to get you, I guess, to where one of the things you were writing about, like you were talking a bit about spaces and
yeah. Well, I mean, it's like and I was just looking at that, and I think we probably in the past talked about this too, but it's like it's just a different structuring of like government priorities in places like that, and they know that history includes art, so it and the future includes art, and it's that creative expression is as valuable as mathematical expression, or it's the same. It is the same playing field. But yeah, I was and so we're all like you were saying too, like watching these spaces close, or struggle massively, and we think, obviously humans think that everything is for eternity, but it's commodification is what's happening to these, and I mean that includes everything. That includes like people's apartments, people's gas stations, people's playgrounds, everything. And yeah, we're all wondering what's going to happen. I was telling you that I was listening to Pipeline on WMBR, and there was this band that I've not heard about before called Black Helicopter, and they were on there talking about they were like, what are we gonna do? Like, nobody wants to hear a streaming concert anymore. And I think that like there's going to be both probably
going forward in the future.
Yeah,
there'll be virtual spaces, and
I only want to see the live stream. I'm never going out again. Fine. But I think the thing about that too is that there is plenty of money around here to keep spaces open. If people wanted to, not necessarily like the owners of individual spaces don't have like endless pockets and stuff like that, but we are, as a metro area, investing in some very particular things that we could just shift our priorities, and I think that's that's the gist of it there. It's like we get, what are we commodifying, and what is commodification, and why are we doing it to the disadvantage of the people who are like basically the reason they like started commodifying things in the first place.
Well, it's partially because artists need to make a living in the society we have. We're not in a gift economy. We're in a capitalist economy. We're not in a socialist economy, whatever the hard right wants to say. This is what it is. And like, so people have to make a living. So yeah, they have to turn their work into units, or else they can be obstreperous like me and, other people that ended up becoming famous and rich, ironically, say, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do experiences. I'm going to do, I'm going to do public art nobody asked for, tag things, whatever it is, right? But even that stuff, like with Banksy, right? Say, Banksy may put up stuff wherever Banksy wants, and not like try to sell it. But other people literally take sections of wall that he's spray painted stuff on or painted stuff on or whatever, and they take it out, they steal it from buildings, and then they actually find ways to sell it to private parties around Banksy. Like it's
and I think that stuff is going to stop. And I don't think that real estate speculation is going to go anywhere. But I think it's like this like narrow view of things really like irks the crap out of me. Like, it's like you can like can we think of like other ways to do this? Like this is just kind of a random thing, but I saw that there was a fundraiser somewhere that involved having your grass cut. Just like, are we doing things like that around here? Like, I don't know.
You saw this somewhere else outside of Boston?
It was in Louisiana.
Oh, well, there you go. No, I have not seen any grass cutting that I am aware of.
You can. I mean, there's just the things that end up like being put out there as solutions just seem so blah to me now. Like I thought that a grass cutting fundraiser was interesting. It's different. We don't. And I'm not saying that everybody needs to go have a grass cutting fundraiser. It's just,
it wouldn't work if everybody did. But yeah, some people do it.
But, we can't all have car washes. We can't all have bake sales. Whatever. It's just like sure, we sit down, we come up with like 25 great ideas instead of like just putting up walls.
I mean, for me, there's got to be more government involvement. That's one sort of non-negotiable thing, and there have been periods in American history, notably the Works Progress Administration period, when the government actually found, federal government put a good deal of money, not nearly as much as they put into other stuff like building dams for other reasons, but they did it, and they hired all kinds of people in the arts, musicians, everybody. And for a few years, it didn't last. The right wing was always unhappy about it,
Yeah.
whereas the left was trying to do more of it.
Exactly. And I mean, even the dam building, though, like all of that, involved people who were making things that were, like just because they weren't showing in white cube galleries.
Right.
But it brought value to those kind of activities.
Well, my father's father did those jobs. I mean, he worked on the baseball stadium in Lynn, Mass, for example. It's a very nice piece of Federalist architecture, I believe. If I remember correctly, I haven't been there in a long time. But like, stuff like that. Like a lot of things people take for granted around here were built like that. Like different parkways we have, stuff like that, and parks. And then in the wilderness, like big national parks and stuff like that, were all built like this. Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I generally view art as a form of human communication, and I also view it as a way that human beings, kind of reflect on their selves, their society, and the universe. Like in our place in it. Beyond that, I don't know. I mean, trying to define this activity or these activities is usually a pretty fruitless exercise. But I mean, people always want to like try to do cost benefit things and like, why should we spend our tax dollars on this on these hippies hanging out? And I'm like, yeah, well, I mean, what do you want? Like, what kind of world do you want?
Yeah.
You just go to work and go home and all this, and you don't even think about like why you're doing it. You don't.
Yeah, and like what are we talking about too? Like, why are we? I mean, I feel like this might be the conversation that you and I have all the time, but like, why are we like, for example, like building massive amounts of housing next to biotech companies and then closing all the restaurants, and so like, what are they really going to like cook themselves? I don't think so. But it's like you just have to have variety of things, like art is just one of those, like what did you just say? Just communication. It's one kind of communication. Some people communicate through their food, some people communicate through their science.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and we also have to try to I hope progress as a species to whatever end, that maybe a nice one, maybe like a Battlestar Galactica ending where we turn out to be gods or something, or angels or whatever it is. I don't know. No one can really figure out the ending of either the old or the new version of Battlestar Galactica, but you know what I'm saying? Like whatever that end is, I mean, like that we try to do better than we did before, and doing better generally means that everybody has a pretty decent life, and an equal opportunity to like, pursue happiness as our earliest American, political documents lied about at first, and now we're trying to make that real. Yeah. But like, but you're talking like pre-pandemic, even like with replacing stuff like restaurants with, well, I mean, I don't know if we talked about this, but certainly I've been in and around Harvard Square of all places for a long time, and I'm about to leave now. But like Harvard Square is gone to me, to all of us, like, from when I was a teenager and came here because it was wicked cool, to when I was like an older teenager and was homeless here and so on and so forth. Everything I understood as Harvard Square is gone. There's like several banks now because banks are the tenants that landowners want, and this is before the pandemic, and we were already losing what little was left of all the interesting, quasi-public spaces, independent stores of various types, stuff like that. Ferment, the mixture of town and gown, that was going on. People from all over the world coming over here, to go to school, either at Harvard or one of the other universities or colleges, and it was, it was neat, and now it's like a few restaurants that have managed to survive even beyond the thing they were having trouble surviving before, like crazy real estate values, which affect commercial real estate as well as individuals, and then the tendency of landlords to want something that's going to guarantee them good money every month, no matter what. And now more of them are gone because they couldn't stay open without being able to let people in their restaurants, many of them. And now it's like just a lot of empty storefronts and a few banks and a few restaurants. I don't know. And then who can afford restaurants right now?
Profit, people are only thinking about like, how can we profit from like a situation or whatever. Like I've been thinking about the, like one of the first things that I loved when I first moved to Boston was the $2 books in Harvard Square. And it was completely illegal, I'm pretty sure. But it was just like
out on Mass Ave. You're talking about the two quasi-homeless people, the husband or boyfriend and girlfriend, with the dog.
With the dog, and they had a little shelf, and it said $2 books on it.
Yeah.
And it was just like there's that, and there was like a handful of other like things that are not really regulated or whatever. And I'm not even going to go into like the regulation conversation, but it's like.
You could.
How much time do we have?
I don't know. We could go up to about an hour, and we're about 40 minutes in. We kind of a screwed up first 10 or 15 minutes, so I don't know.
Okay. Well, anyway, it's like I mean, that goes back to the support for the less formal too. It's like how much formalization do we need? And it's kind of like this calculation that only certain people are allowed to make, like, and they kind of go through and say like, oh, if we do this, oh my gosh, this is, I'm sorry, having too many thoughts at once.
No, go right ahead. Look, I've been babbling. I don't know what's going on.
This is related to what I was thinking too about the, sorry.
No, it's okay.
Sounds outside my window.
We're living life here on the net, so it's cool.
I don't know if you could hear that, but
I could. I heard the car, the truck or whatever go by.
People do that. But this is really so profit though. So the thing I mentioned too about like free membership to places. If we're trying to like get people to like, get into places that are more or less exclusive.
So you mean in the couple of paragraphs you wrote for me, you referenced free memberships to like what?
To like big art spaces, major museums
MFA,
and stuff.
Whatever, like
MFA, whatever. Yeah. But this is like to me that's the same conversation. It's like if we want people to like experience, branded culture, we need to just let them in. And if we want like an interesting, it's not. I'm not saying like I'm not trying to have like a nostalgia conversation, like let's go back to the old days, whatever. But it's like we think of things that like really grabbed us when we go like encounter a space. It's not the Qdoba, it's the obvious.
It's not the food poisoning, although you could view food poisoning as bacterial art. But yeah.
It's like you. I was like, $2 books or whatever, or like, I don't know, like bars you're not really allowed in, or like things, or like, that one venue that had a $4 cover charge, so that's why you win it or whatever. It's like they're not trying to like, turn themselves into the House of Blues or Qdoba or whatever. Like so like my thought process too is that like these more like established places need to like think a little bit in that direction. So
I'm
when I like you want to sort like we're all here, like they're supposed to be like setting an example, right?
The big cultural institutions, right?
The big cultural, but then all of us are like here we are. What was I forget what the first thing you said when you first got on this call is that we have this like public space that we're all in, and we all know that Boston is a very small town. Mm-hmm. So it's really hard to put yourself out there in a small town. And so that's why we all sort of like need to, get in there together and think about like this whole space as a value for all of us. Like we are all, part of this together, or we are, a strip.
We're strip mall, yeah. I mean, and we understanding that sometimes you got to have a strip mall in certain places. I mean, The definition of culture that always sticks with me is something. I have some anthropology training, among various other kinds of training, over the many years, and one definition was culture is the stories we tell ourselves. So I mean, what are especially big cultural spaces, if not places where this should be going on? We should be telling each other stories about ourselves. It should be a big tent, especially a place like the MFA. It shouldn't be, I don't think, as rarefied as it has been. And indeed, I mean, whether these spaces are quote unquote private, like that one is a private nonprofit, or quote unquote public, like let's say the Boston City Hall galleries or whatever, the walls that they use, the space that they provide for public art to some extent. It doesn't matter. It's the same thing. These are still spaces that should be available for use by more people. There shouldn't be as many hoops to jump through. Admittedly, some stuff that people do is more challenging or just off the wall or be considered such to most people, but it is part of the human experience. So I mean, I admit that some arts movements that I've studied, like the Vienna Actionists, who emptied their bowels in public spaces and things like that. Okay, that might be kind of a tough sell, and maybe there should be a little bit of vetting going on there. But I mean, most other things that people want to do is if it's the difference between one piece of representational art and one piece of non-representational art that's going to hang on a wall, and the difference between the artists is simply their educational level. Are we really going to exclude the one over the other because of the fashion of the moment or whatever? Which in fact isn't the fashion of the moment. It's the fashion of a particular rarefied strata of the cultural scene, of the sort of gatekeepers of high culture that dictate. Really, what they're doing is they're preserving an ossified culture. It's the previous moments that they're valorizing and saying this is what we should have in this space now. Whereas other people are actually trying to do the new, the now, and that's not fashionable yet. So it's like, no, you stay out. You're the wrong person.
Yeah.
I hear you.
Yeah. This whole going back to normal, that people are talking about and I think I saw this mentioned somewhere else too, that normal is only what was sort of propping up what was already keeping other people in power. So
propping it up, yeah. Sure. I mean, the way art is used, as a weapon for gentrification and stuff like this, and I mentioned this in the last interview. The Richard Florida style of essentially weaponizing the arts, on behalf of developers. A lot of us don't want anything to do with that stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it's happening literally as we speak right here in East Boston.
Is it?
Yeah.
Where?
Yeah. I mean, it's people don't think that it's happening until it's over.
Yeah, sure.
Right. So
people with money and power move very fast, and
right.
Shit just happens.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So we have, and then the other argument that I've heard too is people are like, oh, well, all these projects were already planned, 20 years ago. So it's just, just because they're happening now is, a coincidence.
It was a deliberative process, and everyone was invited. It's like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, where the Earth's going to be destroyed, and they said, oh, come on, mankind. Didn't you know that the plans for this were on file in Alpha Centauri? What do you mean you couldn't get to Alpha Centauri? It's like, yeah, well, okay. So yeah, there was some process, some dog and pony show that you see in city government.
Right.
Nobody.
So and then it's great that we're all and I'm sort of rare in my age range to be so connected with my neighbors, but that happened as soon as I moved here. Right. Almost as soon as I moved here, people were like, "Oh, you live here? Come to this meeting," and so it's been like that for the past 11 years, and
that's good.
So I thankfully have heard about more things than some people, but it's not, in Spanish every time for
Right.
people who needed to be in Spanish, and it's not um, given to like interested high school arts kids, any of this information that's like, so, like certain people get like pulled in these conversations. And like I said, it's a little bit better than it was,
Mm.
but, just because we are, muralling all over a building doesn't mean that we're like, saving the neighborhood from gentrification. And
Right.
just because we're we have a few local artists who get to be part of the conversation, it doesn't mean we're reaching everyone.
No, I mean
So
murals in this era, and you can quote me on this, or I view them as sort of like grave markers of culture, of lifeways. They're
and
often put up as everything is being shoved out. Oh, remember how
yeah,
what this used to be like before real estate developers shoved everybody out? Wasn't it great? It's like, yeah, well,
but
okay.
it's like everything's fine uh, because we have murals. Like it's
I know, like that's the
like,
only art too. Like, yeah,
but and I love them. Like I don't
me
want to
too.
say like
But
I don't like them. Like that's not even the point. Like it's just like, okay, once they start going up, once we have 15 of them in a specific area, then suddenly it's okay to, um, push further with luxury
well,
nonsense. And
exactly, yeah. I mean,
yeah,
this it's the kind of art that, for better or worse, real estate developers understand at least prosaically, like how can we placate people, like especially like angry artists, from jumping on us and making us look bad, getting bad
yeah.
PR that might affect our
Why
ability to
don't
like do what we want
why
to do.
don't why don't they donate, money to the real estate woes of very tiny cultural centers that have to pay rent
Yeah,
while they're,
yeah.
not really operating.
I
Yeah.
mean, it happens from time to time, but it happened, I think, a lot more in the 60s and 70s, to some extent 80s around here, when a lot of people had left Boston, a lot of industry had left Boston. There was more vacant property. Commercial owners were looking to like do something with stuff rather than have blight, kind of take over, and cities were also looking for that. So there were more opportunities. I will say though, I feel like sometimes some of the older artists involved in those periods kind of pull the ladder up after them. Like and this is
Mm-hmm.
kind of a problem we've seen, and I mean, it's not like people always intentionally do this, but like, people manage to like get, well, for example, big buildings to house a lot of artists, right? Back
Yeah.
20, 30, 40 years ago. Well, there's nowhere left now, or at least there wasn't
Yeah.
before the pandemic. And maybe this is a hopeful future thing. Maybe now, a lot of corporations are actually like going, maybe we should get rid of these offices downtown. We don't need them anymore, right? So like maybe we'll be able to do this, and maybe this is what artists should be thinking about. But I mean, in recent times though, you couldn't you couldn't do what we couldn't do what our predecessors did. There was
Mm-hmm.
just not there was no opportunity. And then also, um, some of these spaces were planned for people to be able to have live workspaces as they kind of developed careers. But then even after, this is kind of like one of the problems that I don't take all these critiques of rent control seriously, but I think this one had some truth to it because I experienced it. I got rent control literally right before it was voted out by asshole suburbanites at the behest of real estate developers. But like it was true that there were a limited number of rent control units because of the way it was done, so it could pass, and people were holding on to units that were making decent money and were at midlife and maybe shouldn't have been. They should have vacated the units so new people could come in who needed them, right? And that's the same with artist housing. So I mean, it's although what are you going to do? You can't paint that broad a brush for older artists and stuff like, oh, damn you older artists, give up your apartments. I mean, we're talking about people who many of whom didn't end up making money. So it's like, so then what's the like? How are we going to build more housing? How are we going to like make things a bit more fair if people have done better and maybe should move along somewhere else because they can afford to? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Like it seems like these are things that we should be discussing here going forward. Um,
Yeah.
because I'm just moving. My wife and I are just moving into another place now, and we're just
Hmm.
doing a regular thing. We're going from one regular apartment that we could barely afford to another one, but at least the rents have fallen some. So like it's somewhat nicer now. So yay! But that's an individual solution. We need solutions that are going to affect thousands of people in a city like Boston, tens of thousands, and not just artists either. It's right.
Yeah, I think isn't somebody talking about development freeze? Or is that like a joke that I made up? I don't
No, I mean you mean like luxury development free, is that kind of thing?
Yeah, yeah. Isn't that I don't know.
I think
I
it
might
may
be
happen anyway because they're they can't move apartments and condos like that if people don't want to live in cities anymore because they're afraid of the remnant of this pandemic and then future pandemics, which we're now being
Yeah,
told we have to be concerned about. So I mean,
right.
maybe the pressure on the Boston real estate market will ease because I'm hearing as a journalist, as someone who's just moving, from realtors and moving companies even, I'm hearing, that people are, if they have the money, getting out of Dodge. They're going to the suburbs. The hated suburbs, the suburbs that every, sort of hipster urbanite, swore up and down they wanted to get away from because it was so stultifying out there. And they left the suburbs to the right wing in many cases and let them go kind of quasi-fascist, which is what we're grappling with
Yeah,
now, right? And so now everyone's
yeah,
going out, people are going out there. Okay, well, maybe that means that when this is over, it'll be a little bit easier for creative, for artists and for everybody else. I don't know. I don't know. What have you heard? Is that what it looks like to you? I don't know.
I do know people who have gotten out of Dodge,
Um,
unfortunately.
which also includes artists, though,
But
right? Because you can do much better further out.
right, right, exactly. And it looks like, and I've seen. Well, I was saying to you too. Like I was in Providence recently, and that's not that far away. And I know that some
Nope.
people have gone in that direction, and they continue to, and they have in the past. But it looks like there's just enough of an edge of affordability down there that
That's
that's
interesting.
a possibility. So I'm not advocating for getting out of Dodge, but I am saying that it's like it looks like there's maybe a way to sort of go halfway. Like you don't have to, I don't know, tear down an entire building and build up a glass something. You can sort of like take things that exist and make them handicap accessible, or take the lead paint out, or things like that, and sort of like make them manageable, instead of going hard for the huge profits. I don't know.
Yeah, well, it's hard to stop people from making profits, trying to make profits, right, when they can. Like, why do dogs lick themselves? Because they can. Why do developers go for profit? Because they can. I mean, it's like there's no, you know.
But if you're like in government, then you sort of have to like, be like, okay, well, you gave me the sandwich before, so like,
Oh, yeah.
what now? Like, are you gonna like, are we gonna have dinner? We just gonna keep eating sandwiches? Like, are we gonna like?
It's
how,
always
how are
great
we
to
gonna
look
like?
at other countries. Like I've written about this before. In um, Vienna in Austria, right before the Nazis had a socialist government for some years in I think the 20s and 30s, right? Um, a municipal government, and they managed to create what they call social housing, right? In America, we call it projects because, governments that built a lot of public housing for working people, retreated from it, as it became convenient to do so, and kind of, let these places deteriorate until only the poorest of the poor lived in them, right? And then they get that bad reputation. Oh, that's a hellhole. That's for poor people. That's for people of color. If you're white, you're racist. You say this kind of thing. We don't want this. Why are we paying for this? Why did these people get these places and then ruin them? They can't take it. All this bullshit, right? So, but social housing is like, okay, we as a municipal government, we're going to tax the rich. We're going to fund nice housing built by top architects, many of whom were lefties themselves, as it happened, and really didn't want to be building stuff for giant corporations. They wanted to be building stuff that regular people would get to use that was really nice, and then keep it nice and make sure that it's a mix of different kinds of people always, So to this day, from what I understand, something like 60% of the Vienna population lives in social housing, and there's no stigma. It's like, and this is true in other countries too, not just in Europe either.
Yeah.
Why? That is what I feel like
Like I've read about this also.
Yeah.
Like this is also all these places end up on design blogs.
Yeah, man, and they have community art spaces. They have the kind of spaces we're talking about built into them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I haven't studied this closely, but probably studio space, probably that kind of stuff too. And I mean, why not? Like, why? If we're supposed to be a democracy, and I think you and I would probably agree housing should be a right, having not had it in the past, and what? Why not? I mean, just because some people win a birth lottery, or some kind of meritocratic lottery, or innate gifts lottery, or whatever, and have and are sociopaths and are willing to just make all the monies, and then they get giant fancy places to live and whatever they want, and the rest of us don't. I mean, I don't know. I don't know why people. I'm not saying everybody accepts this, but most people are resigned to it, in the sense that, like, well, what are you going to do? Are you going to have some cataclysmic revolution and everything gets destroyed anyway? Well, no, I don't think that's a good idea. But, it's going to be hard for us.
Problem for sure.
I'm sorry?
You're right. I'm just agreeing with you. The resignation is the problem for sure. Like, that's the sad part.
Yeah, no, I mean, and I just feel like when I have conversations with people, local artists, like this, going forward, this is always in the back of my mind. I'm asking folks like you to say what you think we can do better, and you've said a couple things, but we know that most of the things that people suggest isn't gonna solve the structural problems that cause the crisis that artists are in, that most everybody else is in. Like, how do we make a living and do the work we want to do for our own betterment and for, we hope, the betterment of society in some fashion, even if it's challenging, difficult work that people don't want to hear or see or touch or experience. That's sometimes people got to take their medicine too, and artists do that. I think good artists do it. So any last thoughts? I don't want to, I obviously don't want to keep you on all day, but although we could just keep going, but
we could, yeah. Yeah, I guess I don't know, and we could definitely keep going.
I was going to just ask you, why don't you tell the viewing audience about Atlantic Works? What is Atlantic Works? You're a part of its community. What is that?
Yeah. Speaking of, I mean, that's a good point. Speaking of social spaces, so the Atlantic Works Gallery is a cooperatively run space. I'm actually like I'm kind of like against like member-based stuff, because it's like a pay-to-play sort of, whatever. But it's like,
yeah.
When I first moved here, they saved my heart from breaking.
That's nice.
So I joined up over there. It's a gallery space. It's on Border Street, and it's very close to Maverick Station. It's in a building full of other art spaces. And I was a paying member over there for about 4 years, and now forever alumni / eventually we'll show the gallery again.
Cool.
A bunch of lovely people.
Yeah. Well, nice. Well, everyone go visit it when it's more open and stuff, and whatever virtual shows that they're having over there, certainly check it out. Audrina Warren, thank you so much for coming on the show today, and I'm sure we'll do more of this kind of discussion in the future. But thanks a lot. So, and hope to hang out soon, less virtually and more concretely. So
Right.
so that's it, folks. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll be back in a couple weeks. So bye, everybody. Bye.